Okay, good morning. So this video today is going to show you how we're going to go about creating the grid drawing for our self-portrait style posterized acrylic painting. So you should have your resource picture, and at this point you should have your grid, 12 inches by 12 inches with a 2-inch size grid. Your square should be 2 by 2 all the way across. You'll end up with some extra paper over here on the side and 1 inch extra across the top. This extra space will be a good spot for you to use to test out your paint colors later, so we're not going to crop any of that off until the painting is finished. But today what I want to show you are a couple of tricks to help you with the grid drawing portion. Your photograph has been posterized using Pixlr.com, and it's been broken down to where there are 3 values. There is white, gray, and black. So with these 3 values, we're going to draw the shapes in of each individual value, and then later on we'll be able to paint each color. So with the white we're going to choose a very, very light color. With the gray we're going to choose sort of a medium color, and then the black a really dark color. We'll be choosing one of our 5 color schemes that we've learned about and picking our colors based on that. So you'll be able to choose monochromatic, complementary, triadic, analogous, or split complementary. But I'll send more information for that once we get to that point. For the moment, in working on your grid drawing, a really important thing to think about is drawing the shapes of each value. So I want to sort of show you how I go about that process. First off, I start with a really sharp pencil, and I want to draw lightly just so I can soften and erase these lines if I need to make adjustments. And also I want it lightly drawn in because sometimes the paint can be a little bit transparent, and if you have really dark heavy pencil marks you can try to erase them, but if they're really, really dark, that can tend to show through your paints, and we don't really want that at the end of the project. So to start off with, you can see that I've started this section where I have the edge for the shape of this black shape for her hair line coming down her forehead. It cuts in through the bridge of her nose, and then I've got this little lighter gray shape that I've drawn in for her other eyelid in that 3/4 view. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can see this better. What I want to sort of show you is how you can kind of think about simplifying stuff. Sometimes you may see shapes where they're very pixelated, and it is totally fine on your resource picture. This helps me visualize it. If I outline and sort of streamline some of those pixelated little marks and break it down into just a shape, and then that makes it a little bit easier for me to draw. So if I go to draw that shape, and again, I always like to keep my picture right beside while I'm working, and just a really quick little illustration. And this should be almost down to the bottom. And you'll see if you make mistakes, if you're drawing lightly, it's easy to erase. Maybe I want to stretch that out a little bit longer. That shape rounds over, comes almost to that black edge, and then goes back up. Now the more specific your drawing is, the more like you it's going to look. So that's me mapping out the shape of that white value. I'll be able to really easily tell that that is a whole complete shape that I need to paint my lightest color, and then the space around it is going to be a whole complete gray shape that I can paint my medium value. Now if I move on, I can come down here and I can now start looking at this white shape here, framing the start of her eye and her eyebrow. It's going to cut across somewhere like that. So that's the start of that white shape. And then I can come down here, and now I can draw in this outer edge. And it kind of comes up to the bridge of her nose. I'm going to sort of simplify those pixelated spots. I'm just going to curve that around. And just those little specks are so minute, I don't think that'll make a big difference in my painting, so I'm going to slightly omit those. And again, the whole time I'm drawing, you can certainly use sticky notes. I highly recommend it to block out and only work on drawing one square at a time. You can also continue to use the tricks like subdividing a square when it's particularly challenging and hard to tell what's going on in the middle of a square. Put that about there. And that just looks like to be a fairly smooth curve. Over for the eyebrow. And then up. And now I'm going to see that this line is going to trace down, and it's going to come almost in line. There's a very skinny little edge of gray that runs right along the bridge of her nose. So now I'm just going to continue. It gets a little wider and a little wider. So now I'll have three distinct areas. The white of her nose, that very skinny little edging of gray, and then the black of her hair running right through there. Now, within this shape, I've got the three white shapes around it. 1, 2, 3. And then within this gray shape that's happening here, I'm also going to have a black shape that's the eye and eyelashes. So again, same thing. If it helps you to visually outline it on your resource picture, kind of streamlining it and simplifying it just a little tiny bit, just so it's a solid, complete line that you can draw easily. So somewhere in that vicinity, and that's going to be the black shape. Up here we also have a little tiny spot that is going to be her eyebrow, so I'm going to visualize that as a shape as well and draw that in. Comes down just below the line and curves up. That part gets very thin. I think I want to soften that just a little bit. Maybe more like that. And so you should be able to see in a section that you have all of the shapes. So this is essentially going to be a really large paint by number. Black, black, white, the space around it, gray, and white. Now just to kind of show you over here on her hair, sometimes you'll run into really complicated sections where there are maybe highlights in the hair, like this. They're very, very detailed, very, very pixelated. I wanted to show you an illustration of how I have sort of simplified those. Slightly simplified and kind of broken down to where I can see them as individual shapes. So I know that the hair here is going to be black, and then these like little highlighted shapes will match fairly similar. And from a distance, once it's painted, that will give me the impression, that will start to give me the impression that I get here in this picture. So I hope that helps you, give you a couple of tricks for how to start blocking in the grid drawing portion. And it should look like this. Don't do any shading, don't color anything in. It's just going to be shapes that we will fill in with paint later.